The rooftop sparkled under a canopy of fairy lights, the city skyline shimmering like a sea of diamonds behind them. A soft breeze tugged at Ivy Rose's champagne-colored dress, fluttering it just enough to draw attention. She laughed, one hand on her chest, the other gripping a flute of Dom Perignon. Her laugh was loud, practiced, meant to carry for cameras. And it did. A drone hummed overhead, capturing every second for her next viral upload. Cole Remington watched her with a polished smile, the kind he'd worn in boardrooms and gala fundraisers. His suit was tailored to the millimeter, his Rolex catching the candlelight with every practiced move. He held the tiny velvet box in his hand, thumb brushing the gold-trimmed edge. His eyes, though, they flicked to his phone twice in a single minute. The screen still glowed faintly in his pocket. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and like, spread the word and tell us where you're watching from. 12 missed calls, one name. Emilia. He dropped to one knee and a collective gasp erupted from the small circle of invited influencers and stylists gathered behind Ivy. She froze theatrically, mouth parted in disbelief. "Oh my God," she whispered, hands flying to her cheeks. "Ivy Rose," Cole said, voice low but sure. "You're the light that makes the city disappear. Will you marry me?" Ivy nodded before the words had even settled, practically diving into his arms. Champagne spilled. Cameras flashed. The drone zipped in for a tight close-up as Ivy held out her trembling hand, the oversized diamond glittering like a trophy. They kissed, or at least posed like it, while one of Ivy's managers signaled the DJ to cue the curated playlist of romantic acoustic covers. Cole's arms stayed steady around her waist, but his shoulders stiffened as his phone buzzed once more. "Not a call this time, just a message. You said you'd come today." He closed his eyes for half a second too long. By the time he opened them, Ivy was already back in front of the phone camera, giving a shaky, joyful recap to her followers. Cole nodded along, grinning like a man in love, but his fingers twitched at his side. The party moved inside. Guests filtered into a crystal-walled dining room lit by chandeliers and soaked in candlelight. Ivy floated from table to table like a princess, showing off the ring, her voice giddy, rehearsed. She was already talking about the wedding hashtag. Cole stepped away, into the hallway. The music dimmed as the door clicked shut behind him. He finally looked at the message again, reading it like a punch. Then he hit delete. Back inside, Ivy called for him with a mock pout. "Babe, you're missing dessert." He turned, smiled, walked in. He didn't see the server who dropped a phone from his tray in the corner, or the fact that the screen was still recording, but someone else would. Very soon, rain tapped against the window pane like fingers drumming out a warning. Emilia sat cross-legged on the worn-out sofa, her laptop balanced on a cushion, flickering with pale blue light. The apartment was quiet except for the rhythmic hum of a white noise machine and the soft cooing from the crib in the corner. One of the boys stirred, but she didn't move. Not yet. She hadn't planned to watch it. Hadn't even known it was happening. The livestream link had been buried in a repost from a fashion influencer she didn't follow anymore. But curiosity had fingers of its own, and it clicked play before her mind could say no. There he was, Cole, in a black suit that looked custom-made to house arrogance, smiling like sin, kneeling on some rooftop that looked like a magazine cover. "Will you marry me?" Emilia didn't blink. Her fingers clenched the edge of the cushion as the camera panned to Ivy Rose, glittering, giggling, barely legal. She squealed, nodded, cried with perfectly contoured eyes. The screen turned into static behind her eyes. Emilia's breath hitched. The hurt had grown old but not dull. It sat behind her ribs like a shard of glass, invisible but cutting whenever it shifted. She closed the laptop. Her hand trembled as she set it on the coffee table. Her legs felt numb. She leaned forward, pressing her elbows into her knees, forehead resting on her hands. The baby in the crib let out a soft sound, half a sigh, half a giggle. Emilia looked up. The smallest of the three boys had rolled over, his fist wedged against his cheek. She stood and walked over, brushing her fingers over his dark curls. He had Cole's hair. All three did. And his eyes. And his dimple when they smiled, though they didn't smile often unless they were together. Cole had never seen them. He hadn't wanted to. She had told him she was pregnant the night he'd left. He'd laughed, said something about birth control not being that faulty, and walked out. She hadn't seen him since. Not once, not when they were born. Not when they spent 3 weeks in the NICU. Not when she named them alone. She'd mailed the test results once. Just once. He hadn't responded. Now he was proposing like none of it had happened. Like the 3 children with his face didn't exist. She walked to the window, staring down at the street below. A delivery bike passed by. A cab honked somewhere in the distance. The world kept moving, but something inside her had stopped. It wasn't rage. Not yet, it was something heavier. Something that curled around her lungs and made it hard to breathe. She picked up her phone, opened the photo folder, scrolled past diaper pictures, hospital bands, half-eaten birthday cakes. 3 smiling boys in matching pajamas stared back at her. Their eyes shimmered with something she hadn't had in years. Belief. She didn't cry. She opened her notes app. Typed 3 words, "He forgot us." Then she hit delete. No. Not forgot, erased. From behind her, one of the boys called out softly. "Mama," she turned, smiled faintly, walked back, scooping him up as his brothers stirred in the crib beside him. 3 hearts, 3 reasons. She hadn't been invited, but maybe she'd show up anyway. Ivy twirled beneath a cascade of ivory fabric, her voice rising above the rustle of silk. "Do you think blush is overdone for spring weddings?" she asked, spinning to face Cole with mock horror. "Be honest. I want Vogue, not Vegas." Cole sat stiffly on the edge of a plush chaise inside the private bridal salon. He watched her like one might watch a chandelier sway slightly in an earthquake. Beautiful, fragile, and one wrong question away from crashing. "Blush is fine," he murmured. "Classic." Ivy grinned, then turned to the assistant holding swatches. "Told you he gets it." She moved on to centerpieces, babbling about cascading orchids and celebrity photographers. Cole nodded when necessary, but his mind drifted. Every question about firsts scraped against old wounds. First wedding? First love? First time you knew it was real? He'd been dodging the guest list conversation for a week. Ivy wanted to live stream invitations to their top-tier circle. She even considered inviting his old college buddies for credibility. But when she asked if there were any past friends or exes they should consider for drama value, he went quiet. "You're acting like your ex is dead," she teased, tossing a veil over her head like a ghost. He forced a chuckle. "Might as well be," she laughed, pulling the veil off. "That bad, huh?" He didn't answer. That night, while Ivy posted rehearsal clips on her stories, Cole sat on the edge of their hotel bed, phone dimmed low in his hand. He typed her name slowly, almost reverently, Amelia Langford. Google filled in the rest before he finished. The same 3 results. A LinkedIn profile from years ago, a bakery fundraiser GoFundMe page, and a tagged photo from someone's baby shower. Unrelated. Her digital footprint had all but disappeared. He stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the old fundraising link. He remembered the last conversation like it was yesterday. Amelia crying, him pacing, the ultrasound photo lying crumpled between them. His voice, cold, certain. This isn't part of the plan, and hers, shaking, you were the plan. He'd left. Bought a new phone. Blocked every number. Told himself she'd lied. Or exaggerated. Or miscarried. Or aborted. Something clean. Something that let him sleep. But now, watching Ivy spin through her influencer dreams and pink peony obsessions, a strange guilt brewed beneath the tuxedo-perfect image he wore. His phone buzzed with a DM Ivy.Rose official. "Can you look at this floral arch?" "It's so cute," he sighed. Locked the screen. He got up and opened the minibar, letting the silence settle. He hadn't thought of Amelia in months. Maybe years, but now, her face flickered behind every flower arrangement, every silk napkin, every kiss Ivy planted on his cheek for the camera. She had been the opposite of Ivy. Grounded, quiet, honest to a fault. And when she smiled, it wasn't for an audience. It was for him. He downed the whiskey in one shot, the burn sharper than expected. He didn't hear Ivy behind him. "Babe," she said, wrapping her arms around his waist. "What are you thinking about?" He smiled without turning. "Just how lucky I am," she giggled, kissing his shoulder. "Get some sleep. Big day tomorrow, the tasting." He nodded, but his eyes drifted back to his phone on the nightstand. He hadn't clicked the fundraiser link. But tomorrow, maybe he would. The fireproof box clicked open with a soft, metallic sigh. Emilia knelt on the bedroom floor, the pale afternoon light stretching across the carpet like a slow exhale. Dust motes danced above the open lid as she pulled out a small stack of papers, old hospital records, immunization cards, a wrinkled sonogram photo. And there it was, the envelope, still sealed, still heavy with the weight of what was never acknowledged. Her hand trembled as she picked it up, her thumb brushing the faded corner. Across the front in her own handwriting were 4 words that once meant everything. "Just read it, Cole." She pressed the envelope to her chest and shut her eyes. The memory crashed back before she could stop it. It was raining that night too, harder, colder. She remembered how her shoes had soaked through as she stood outside his high-rise, the doorman giving her a pitying look as he waved her in. She hadn't planned it, hadn't rehearsed a speech, just brought the envelope and her hope. Cole had answered the door shirtless, sweat glistening on his chest, a gym towel draped around his neck. He looked annoyed before he even saw her face. "You can't just show up here," he'd said. "I didn't know how else to—" She stopped herself, lifted the envelope like it was proof of innocence. "It's a paternity test, from the prenatal DNA kit. You said you wanted proof." His jaw clenched. "You're unbelievable. It's yours, Cole, they are. Please just read it." He grabbed the envelope from her hands and stared at it like it was radioactive. "You think this changes anything?" he hissed. "You think a test erases the fact that you tricked me into this? That you saw a bank account and got creative with timing?" "I loved you," she whispered. He turned, walked to the kitchen. She followed him halfway before stopping short as he opened the trash bin. "I'm not reading this," he said. Then he dropped the envelope inside. Her voice broke. "Why?" "Because if I read it," he snapped, turning back toward her, "then it's real. Then I have to care. And I don't." The silence that followed was worse than yelling. She backed out of the apartment slowly, hands shaking, nausea rising. He didn't stop her. Now, sitting cross-legged on the bedroom floor, Emilia looked down at that same envelope, the twin to the one he'd discarded. She had made a second copy. Just in case, the seal was still intact. No one but her had ever seen it. She heard a soft thud from the living room and the sound of tiny feet padding across the floor. One of the boys, probably Julian, was awake. She tucked the envelope into a file folder, slid it back into the box, and pushed it beneath the bed. She stood and walked to the doorway. 3 small boys sat on the rug, building towers with foam blocks. Julian looked up and smiled with Cole's exact crooked grin. Her heart ached. She crouched beside them and whispered, "You know what, babies? I think Daddy's getting married soon." Julian looked confused. "What's married?" Emilia smiled tightly. "It's when someone makes a promise. But sometimes they forget they already made one." She kissed his forehead and looked out the window. Tomorrow, she'd take that envelope somewhere it couldn't be ignored. The morning sun filtered through gray clouds, casting a cold light across Emilia's tiny apartment. The boys were unusually quiet, as if sensing the weight in the air. The living room was a chaos of small tuxedos and shoelaces, and Emilia moved like a woman sleepwalking through a dream she couldn't wake from. Julian's bow tie kept twisting. She knelt and fixed it again, her hand steady but her breathing shallow. Next to him, Miles bounced on the sofa cushion while Eli tried to button his shirt backwards. "Hold still," she whispered, smoothing their collars. "We have to look perfect today. Not out of vanity, out of necessity." She'd rented the tuxedos from a consignment shop downtown. 3 black suits with mismatched linings, pressed as best as she could manage. They looked like tiny groomsmen, unaware of what the day meant. She walked into the kitchen, the envelope in her purse, tucked beneath a folder of birth certificates and that lone ultrasound photo. She hadn't slept the night before, had watched the ceiling fan spin shadows across the room for hours. This wasn't revenge, it couldn't be. It was about being seen, heard, not by the world, but by him. She zipped up the diaper bag, not because they needed diapers anymore, but she couldn't shake the habit, just like she couldn't shake the memories. The door buzzed downstairs. Her breath caught. The driver, She lifted Miles, took Eli's hand, and nudged Julian forward with a whisper. Let's go on an adventure. Downstairs, the black limousine idled on the curb like something out of someone else's life. The driver stepped out, a tall man in a cap and gloves. He opened the door silently, his eyes scanning the children with mild surprise. He didn't ask questions. She helped each boy in, then slid in last, her dress catching on the doorframe. It wasn't glamorous, just a simple crimson gown she'd altered herself. It used to be her mother's. She had no makeup on, no jewelry, just that envelope pressing against her ribs. The door shut with a click that sounded too final. As the limo pulled away, she glanced at the apartment one last time. The broken blinds, the sagging porch step, the ghost of every night she'd rocked them to sleep alone. She faced forward. The city rushed by in a blur. Streetlights, billboards, strangers living lives that didn't touch hers. In the rearview mirror, she saw her face reflected, pale, expressionless. Then the boys, 3 identical profiles. They sat in a row, legs dangling, fidgeting with their sleeves, not understanding. Not yet, but they would. One day they'd ask why they weren't invited, why their father didn't know their names. She would not have to lie. Her hands curled into fists in her lap, then slowly unclenched. The driver spoke for the first time. Destination again, ma'am? Her throat was dry. Park Hill Estate. The main hall. The wedding was scheduled for noon. According to the RSVP website she wasn't supposed to see, the guest list was locked. No room for late additions. Especially not the woman he left behind. She didn't care about crashing a ceremony. She cared about showing him what couldn't be buried. As the engine roared softly beneath them, the boys laughed at something Miles said. She smiled faintly. But her hands, folded neatly in her lap, had begun to tremble. Not from fear, not anymore. From restraint. The violin swelled as Ivy took her final step down the aisle. Every seat in the lavish glass chapel faced forward, the late morning light flooding through stained windows that painted soft reds and golds onto the polished white marble floor. The officiant beamed. The guests whispered behind manicured fingers. Ivy's followers watched live from every continent. Cole stood at the altar in a black tuxedo, his jaw tight, smile forced. He nodded as she approached, his fingers twitching beside the velvet ring box. Ivy looked radiant, cinematic even, with her fitted lace gown and airbrushed skin. But his eyes weren't on her. They were on the heavy oak doors, still closed, still safe. The officiant cleared his throat. We are gathered here today. Cole exhaled. Maybe she wouldn't come. Maybe she changed her mind. The vows began. Every word bounced hollow in Cole's ears. Ivy giggled when the officiant mentioned forever. Cole barely moved. Sweat beaded at his temples. Then, as the ring was presented, the doors groaned. It wasn't a knock. It was a push. 2 ushers turned just as the heavy wooden doors swung open with a creaking finality that drowned out even the string quartet. Heads turned. Gasps scattered like gunfire. A woman stood silhouetted by daylight, backlit and motionless. Emilia. She stepped forward slowly, heels echoing on marble. She wasn't wearing anything flashy. No dramatic veil, no smoky eye makeup. Just a crimson dress that clashed with the wedding's blush theme, and in each of her hands, 1 child. The third walked beside her, clutching her hem. 3 little boys, black tuxedos, matching hair, and the same emerald green eyes as the man frozen at the altar. Cole's mouth opened, but no sound came. He dropped the ring. It hit the floor with a metallic ping and rolled in a slow, spinning arc before settling in the center of the aisle, right in front of Emilia's foot. The chapel was silent. Not stunned, paralyzed. Ivy turned. Slowly. At first, she blinked like it was a hallucination. Then her face paled. Her painted smile crumbled. Emilia didn't speak, not yet. She didn't need to. The triplets said everything. Gasps rose from the front rows. Ivy's mother leaned forward, mouthing, "Are those?" One boy, Julian, tilted his head at Cole. "Mama," he said quietly. "That's the man from the picture." His voice was soft but clear. Everyone heard. Emilia knelt beside him and whispered, "Shh, let him speak first." Cole took 1 step forward. Then another. His feet were heavy, his hands numb. He didn't know what he was walking toward, judgment, ruin, or reckoning. Maybe all three. He looked down at the ring, still lying in the aisle. Unclaimed, unwanted. Then he looked at Ivy. She didn't cry. She laughed. A high, sharp sound that cracked the silence like a glass shattering on tile. "Oh my God," she said, turning full body toward him. "Are you serious? This is your ex?" Her voice echoed. "You told me she was a mistake." She spat, pointing. "You said she lied. That there were no kids." Cole's throat worked, but nothing came out. The officiant took a careful step back, setting his script down like it had started burning. Emilia stood, her face calm, her voice low but steady. "You told me you'd never love again," she said to Cole. "You said that before you walked away, before you ignored everything," Ivy scoffed. "This is so pathetic. Is this even real? Or just some play for child support?" Emilia reached into her purse. She didn't pull out a weapon, she pulled out the envelope. She held it out for everyone to see. "Unopened, pristine. DNA test," she said. "Dated before the wedding invites ever went out." Julian stepped closer to Cole, studied him, then said with a tiny innocent smile, "We have your nose." Cole fell to his knees, and the chapel watched. A champagne glass hit the marble floor and shattered. Someone near the back let out a soft gasp, quickly muffled by a gloved hand. Ivy's scream sliced through the hush like a serrated blade. "Is this some Psycho X stunt?" "Is this some Psycho X stunt?" She took a step toward Emilia, heels clicking, veil trembling. "You think ruining my wedding's going to win him back? Newsflash, you were just a warm-up." Emilia didn't flinch, didn't blink. She held the DNA envelope in one hand, but her gaze never left Cole. He was still kneeling, not out of remorse, not yet, more like paralysis. His mouth hung slightly open, lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. His eyes darted between each child, slowly processing their identical features. The youngest, Eli, tugged at his mother's hand. His voice was soft but clear, the kind of voice that doesn't understand shame or spectacle. "Is that Daddy?" He said it into the small clip-on mic attached to Emilia's purse strap, left on from the car ride. His voice amplified across the chapel's speaker system like a confession from heaven. And just like that, silence fell. A deep, holy silence, thick, absolute. Then the whispers began. They moved like wind through dry leaves, rustling from one guest to another. Heads tilted, jaws clenched. Phones raised. Guests typed furiously, snapping photos they'd pretend not to post. A bridesmaid lowered her bouquet and mouthed, "Jesus." Ivy stood frozen, veil slipping from her pinned hair. "You lied to me," she hissed. She turned to Cole, eyes blazing. "You swore there were no kids. You said she made it all up, that she was obsessed with you." Cole rose slowly. Shut up." Her voice cracked. Julian, the eldest by 6 minutes, stepped forward and stared up at Cole. He tilted his head, studying him with quiet curiosity. No anger, just innocence. "You look tired," he said softly. Laughter broke out from somewhere near the back. Nervous, unkind. Cole's ears burned. The officiant had quietly exited stage right. "Ivy," Cole whispered, trying to reach for her. "I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't open the test. I thought she was—" "Don't!" Ivy backed away, dress swishing against the marble like silk on stone. "This is who you are? You stood here with me while this—" she gestured wildly to the boys, "was walking toward us." Emilia finally spoke. Her voice wasn't angry. It was still. "This isn't about you," she said. Ivy blinked. "Excuse me?" Emilia stepped forward. Her tone didn't rise. "It's not about your dress or your day or your guest list. It's about them. About the 3 people he chose to erase." Gasps again. Louder this time, one of the groomsmen whispered. "Wait, 3?" Like he hadn't counted. Eli rubbed his eyes. Miles yawned. Julian reached up, wrapping small fingers around Cole's. Cole didn't pull away. Emilia turned to leave. Slowly, deliberately, the envelope still in her hand. The boys followed, tiny shoes tapping rhythmically against the stone floor. At the chapel door, Emilia paused and glanced over her shoulder, not at Cole, but at Ivy. You said I was dead. A pause. I'm not. She walked out. The chapel doors swung shut behind them with a sound that echoed like judgment. The door slammed shut behind him, echoing off the marble walls of the dressing room. Cole twisted the lock with trembling fingers and backed away as if the chaos outside might seep through the wood and drown him. His reflection stared back from the floor-length mirror, tuxedo askew, face pale, sweat dampening his collar. He gripped the edge of the table. His knees buckled and he sank onto the velvet bench beneath the mirror. Outside, murmurs and camera shutters still buzzed like a swarm. A soft knock. He didn't respond. Another knock. Firmer. Cole, came Emilia's voice through the door. Steady. Quiet. He hesitated, then stood and unlocked it, wordless. She stepped inside, closing it behind her. The room suddenly felt smaller. She didn't yell. Didn't cry. Just walked past him and placed the envelope gently on the table between them. He stared at it like it was radioactive. You could have sent that in again, he muttered. I did, she said. 3 times. His face twitched. She stayed standing. Her crimson dress stark against the pale walls. The silence between them was thicker than the air outside had ever been. They ask about you, she said. Not every day, but often enough. He looked up, startled. What do you tell them? That you're busy, that you live far away. Then maybe someday when you're ready you'll come meet them. That's not fair to them. She cut in. No, it's not. Cole ran a hand through his hair, pacing a few slow steps before stopping near the wall. You ambushed me. In front of cameras. In front of everyone. Emilia tilted her head. You ignored me. In private, repeatedly. His jaw clenched. I tried to tell you, she continued. Back then I begged you to read it. You didn't want to know. I was scared, he snapped, louder than intended. A pause. Of what? She asked. He swallowed. Of being wrong. Of it being true. Of not knowing what to do with all of it. Emilia's expression softened, just barely. You could have asked. You could have tried, she said. Instead, you threw them away before they were even born. He sat again, elbows on his knees, face in his hands. I can't undo it, he whispered. I know. I was a coward. I know that too. He looked up at her then, eyes wet, the facade gone. I don't know how to be what they need. They don't need perfect, she said gently. They need present. He leaned back against the mirror, breathing shallow. I saw one of them smile, he murmured. Same dimple I have in old photos. Same one my dad had, she nodded. Julian, he notices everything. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, then looked at the envelope. Can I open it now? Emilia didn't answer. She simply nodded once and turned toward the door. As she reached for the handle, she paused. They're waiting in the car, she said without turning around. You can walk out the front door, or come to the window and wave. It's your call. Then she left him there, surrounded by mirrors, silence, and a piece of paper he should have read years ago. The Rolls-Royce door shut with a crisp click, sealing Ivy inside a bubble of air-conditioned luxury and silence. She didn't scream, didn't sob. She just stared at her reflection in the tinted window, adjusting her veil with a precision that bordered on robotic. Camera, she said flatly. Her assistant, pale and shaken, hesitated. Are you sure? Now. The front camera blinked to life on Ivy's phone, bathing her face in soft light. She hit go live without a second thought. Hey, loves, she said, voice sugar-coated and bitter beneath. Just checking in from what should have been the happiest day of my life. She paused, adjusted the framing to catch just enough of the white lace spilling from her dress. Viewers poured in by the thousands. Comments scrolled. What happened? Is this about the ex? OMG, where's Cole? Ivy rolled her eyes dramatically. Turns out, she said, voice dropping a note, my fiancé forgot to mention he fathered 3 kids and ghosted the mother. At our wedding. In front of everyone. Gasps filled the chat. Like I always knew I dated older, she added, but I didn't realize I was signing up for a full-on paternity scandal. Y'all, I dodged a bullet. A walking lawsuit with cheekbones, she smirked. The driver adjusted his mirror but said nothing. Ivy swiped at a tear that hadn't fallen, then leaned in closer to the camera. And let's be real, she said, dropping the influencer voice. If someone can lie that deep, With a tux and a straight face, imagine what else they're hiding. She ended the stream. The quiet returned. Her assistant stared out the window, unsure what to say. Ivy looked down at the ring still on her finger, twisted it once, then pulled it off and dropped it into the cup holder like gum she no longer wanted to chew. A notification pinged. She unlocked her phone. Park Hill wedding disaster was trending. Clips from the ceremony, Julian asking, "Is that Daddy?" Out of the envelope, Cole's stunned silence were already circulating with viral captions. She pulled up with triplets like a plot twist. Father of the Year caught live. Ivy Rose's wedding ruined or rescued. Ivy smirked again. Her followers had jumped by 12,000 in the last 10 minutes. She pulled out a compact and powdered the bridge of her nose. "Send me the contract," she said to her assistant. "We're selling the dress photo set. Tag it runaway bride with receipts." "And Cole?" her assistant asked gently. Ivy scoffed. "He can keep the cake." "I'm keeping the algorithm." As the rolls turned out of the estate gates, a photographer snapped one final image. Ivy leaning back against the seat, veil slightly crooked, staring straight at the lens like nothing had broken at all. But far behind them, through the chapel's upper window, 3 small faces still watched for a man who hadn't come out. The office smelled like cedar and old money. Cole sat across from a thick mahogany desk, the leather chair creaking beneath him as he shifted for the 3rd time. His tie hung loose, jacket folded beside him, shirt sleeves rolled up as if he'd just walked through a storm. In many ways he had. Behind the desk, his longtime attorney, Greg Salter, adjusted his glasses and tapped a pen twice against a stack of legal papers. "You're sure?" Greg asked. Cole didn't look up. He kept his gaze on the polished floor. "Yes. Even after what happened?" A long pause. Cole nodded. "Especially after what happened." Greg slid the papers across the desk. "Their names, full legal names, go here and here." Beneath the estate clause, Cole took the pen. For a moment he just held it. His hand trembled barely. "Julian Cole Langford," he whispered. The name scratched across the line in dark ink. Miles Emerson Langford. Eli Thomas Langford. Each signature felt like a stone sinking into a still pond. He hesitated for a second, then reached for the final page. A short line. Just 1 sentence required. "I acknowledge and include the aforementioned children as my biological heirs, with equal rights of inheritance." He signed. Greg sat back, watching him carefully. Cole exhaled. "It's time." Silence filled the space between them. Heavy, settled. Greg opened a new folder, this one stamped with legal seals. "There's more," he said quietly. Cole looked up, expression dull. "More?" Greg nodded. "You've been served." He placed a formal envelope on the desk. The name Amelia Langford printed in precise lettering across the top. Cole took it slowly, opening the seal like it might bite. "Full custody," Greg explained, "and a claim for 5 years of unpaid support, retroactive, medical expenses, education, therapy." Cole didn't respond. "And before you ask," Greg added, "yes, the court will take into account the fact that you've never seen them until last week. It's not favorable." Cole leaned back, the document in his hands unread. His eyes drifted toward the tall windows behind Greg's chair. Outside, the city moved on without him. "Can I fight it?" he asked finally. Greg hesitated. "You can try. But the question isn't if you can fight it. It's if I should." Greg nodded. Cole's mouth was dry. He closed the envelope, folded it, and tucked it into the inside pocket of his jacket. "I never wanted this to happen," he muttered. Greg leaned forward. "You didn't want them. You didn't want her. But now they exist. That matters more." Cole stood. "Tell her I won't contest custody." Greg blinked. "You sure?" He nodded. "But I want visitation and I want to meet them again. Without cameras. Without noise." He reached for the doorknob, paused. "And tell her I'm selling the penthouse." Greg raised an eyebrow. "Where will you go?" Cole gave a hollow smile. "Someplace with smaller mirrors." Then he stepped out into the hallway, legal folder under his arm, and the door shut behind him with a quiet finality. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from. The smell of chocolate cake filled the small kitchen. 3 plastic chairs stood around a folding table, each one decorated with a paper crown taped to the back. On the table sat a simple sheet cake with blue frosting. 3 uneven candles poking out from the center. their flames flickering against the soft hum of the overhead light. Amelia stood by the sink, wiping her hands with a dish towel. Her eyes stayed on the boys, Julian, Miles, and Eli, who were huddled around the cake, giggling as they poked at the icing with plastic forks before she could cut it. She didn't stop them. Laughter was rare and precious, and today she didn't want to measure it. A knock came at the door. It was soft, careful. She hesitated, then walked over and opened it. Cole stood there alone. No suit, no chauffeur. Just jeans, a plain button-down, and a small gift bag gripped tightly in one hand. He looked older. Not tired, but quieter, like someone who had learned the cost of silence. "Hey," he said. Amelia didn't answer at first. Then she stepped aside. He entered slowly, his eyes scanning the space, the peeling wallpaper, the handmade birthday banner, the mismatched chairs, and then his sons. They looked up. Julian blinked. Miles froze, mid-bite. Eli smiled, frosting on his cheek. "That's the man from the church." Julian whispered something to Miles. The boys turned toward their mother. Searching her face for permission, she nodded once. They went back to the cake. Cole stepped toward them but didn't speak. He set the small bag on the edge of the table. Inside were 3 identical action figures still in boxes. He'd chosen them last night, walking through a toy aisle alone for the first time in his life. "They're not wrapped," he said awkwardly. Julian picked one up, inspected it, then nodded in approval. "Cool," Cole smiled faintly. His eyes flicked to the third chair, the one farthest from the boys. He didn't sit. Amelia walked back to the counter and picked up a knife. "You want a slice?" she asked. He paused. "I wasn't sure if I could stay." She looked at him. Not angry. Not forgiving. "Just present, you can," she said. "If you want to explain," she gestured to the empty chair. He sat. Not too close, but not far either. Amelia began cutting the cake. Cole watched as Eli tried to blow out the candles and accidentally spat frosting across the table. The other 2 roared with laughter. "I don't know where to begin," Cole said. Amelia placed a slice of cake on a paper plate. "Try the truth." He looked at her, then at the boys, and started not a monologue. Not an apology speech, just words, small ones, about what he was afraid of, what he ignored, what he ran from. He didn't cry, but his voice cracked once. Julian slid his slice toward him without a word. An offering. Cole accepted it. The candles had melted into tiny puddles. The frosting was uneven. But for the first time, he didn't feel like a stranger at his own table. Eli climbed onto his lap without asking. Miles handed him a fork. Amelia watched. She didn't interrupt. She just sat down across from him and picked up her own fork. Outside, the sun began to set, casting long amber shadows across the room, and for a few minutes, just minutes, everything was still.